Hi everybody, it's Dr. Dan Fedeli coming to you from the Balancing Center, and today we're here to talk about depression. And it's a broad topic, and it's really an inevitability of low intensity, long duration stress. Because in the low intensity, long duration stress, that's actually called strain trauma. And there's two kinds of trauma. One is shock trauma, high intensity, short duration, which can cause the body to lock in a response, or low intensity, long duration. We've talked to you about the body's mechanics, how when the head gets out of position and off of its seat, that the body has to compensate so that the physical body goes into a strain trauma. But the pandemic now, for coming on a year, has been a low intensity, long duration strain on the body, and the body keeps adapting and adapting and adapting and adapting. One of the things we do here with the neuroemotional technique, the bioenergetic synchronization technique, the energy kind of work that I do to help supplement the engagement, adaptability, and resiliency of the body, it kind of keeps bringing the body back to a new level, a new base year, so that the body then can go out and respond to stress again. One of the things we use with that is the circuits of the body. The heart small intestine meridian, which is your fire meridian, seems to be one that keeps blowing on people, because instead of fire, passion, and purpose, it's running vulnerability, isolation, out there on your own, and we're being told to stay in place, stay isolated, and that's just a real stress for the system. So when we work with you, whether it's here or in long distance, the long distance work can work through these energetic channels because I can tap into your system from afar. There are specific things that I do that I really feel help the physicality, because if the body is blown a fuse, it tends to lock into certain places of the spine. And the reason that we have so much resiliency, resourcefulness, and adaptability here after we get the correction of your neck is that we keep resetting your nervous system so that it's not locked and loaded into a trauma. So trauma can be shock trauma, which is short duration, high intensity, or strain trauma, which is long duration, low intensity, but each one of it locks in a response. So using the foundational movement practices, which is on our YouTube channel, and coming in to make sure that your body is aligned, and if you're not near here, we can't necessarily do that. Long distance work works because I can still use the meridian systems and use ways of discerning which circuits are blowing and have you do certain movements, certain touching of yourself, and just we can kind of reboot the system from a distance. You know, a lot of times when my computers go down, the computer technician taps into the system and works on it from his computer. So that's a little bit of how we can do distance work here. And some of the things we need to have you here because we need leverage and connection and ways to work with your spine. But a lot of the reason the spine's under tension is because it's being told to be that way from chronic or acute stress and trauma. There's two kinds of trauma. One is shock trauma, high intensity, short duration, like an accident and an injury after an automobile accident, a fall on the ice, a blow to the head. And then there's strain trauma, which is low intensity, long duration, which is like a year-long pandemic that just keeps pulling resources and making your body adapt. So the spleen, pancreas, stomach is about healthy boundaries, self-worth, taking big things, breaking it into little pieces, and enjoying your sweetness of life. When it's blown, it's about lack of control over concern, too much on my plate. Okay, the heart, small intestine is about fire, passion, and purpose. When it's blown, it's about vulnerable, isolated, out there on your own. I'm finding that with almost every person that comes in feeling vulnerable, isolated, and out there on their own. Liver, gallbladder is about healthy boundaries and self-worth, and when it's not, it's about anger and resentment, and we start to, depending on what your default settings are for neuroemotional response in your life, it could be apathy, it could be resignation, it could be anger. And so if we can work with you from a distance with the energetic work, and if you can get into the office. Now, the city is really keeping itself, the city is much more open than it ever was before. The office is very clean. People are, socially distanced. And so it's like it's a time for us to start to get out a little bit before the winter kind of resets in on us, and take care of yourself. And if you want some help from a distance, there is ways. I mean, I have people around the country that sort of depend on me to keep rebooting them from a distance, and it seems to work very well. I just want to make sure that you have the resources available to you, because low intensity, long duration stress is recorded as a trauma. And what we're talking about here is it eats up the brain chemistry, which can lead down into depression. And then once you're in depression, it's hard to get the motivation. But movement and engagement, not just movement and movement and movement, but with the movement practices, if you're doing them correctly, you should feel pushing into the ground and the ground pushing back up against you as you reorganize and do oppositional strain and tension and dynamic tension and static tension on one side and static tension on the other side. So if you have some questions, you can always reach out to me about some of the movement practices and some of the self-care practices you can do. But we really don't want people slipping down into depression and resignation. We want to have you be in engagement, responsiveness, capable, adaptable, engaged, and just continue to have a healthy, happy response as we keep moving into a place where the world will be opening up and we'll have a lot more connection, leverage, and resource in the world.